Let's talk about reverb and how to fix it. So, in today's conversation, I want to talk about reverb. I want to talk about what causes it, but most importantly, I want to really explain to you how to really fix it once and for all. So, here's the approach I want you to think about. When you think about reverb, I want you to think about a normal process. Reverb in a room is a result of reflections. Okay, so when I say normal process, we are speaking about sound traveling from the area where you are actually recording your audio. Sound travels from the source, and the sound actually hits a wall or other surface and bounces back into your ears at a delay, causing a reverb or echo. But unlike light, sound doesn't travel along a single path. It actually resonates outward and bounces against many surfaces simultaneously or in succession manner, and this forms several reflections that define your acoustic space. And this could be problematic or not problematic depending on how you have set things up. And so additionally, the location and size of something reflecting your audio can cause a buildup of certain frequencies. And so you can walk into any standard rectangular room without carpeting. You will realize that you have reverb. For instance, if you stand near a corner or even clap your hands, unless that room has been built to precise acoustic dimensions, chances are you will hear a slight warbling ring after you clap your hands. And this ring is actually called a flutter. Now imagine your voice or your mix in this space, okay? And you'll begin to understand how that annoying little ring can produce suboptimal results when actually recording or mixing there. So similarly, if you stand in the corner of the room and speak in a low, natural voice, you will notice that your lower register resonates more. So a boxy reflection occurs as your voice bounces not only off the corner walls and into your ears, but off the ceiling above and the floor below you. So this produces a standing wave that unnaturally enhances the best reflections in your room. So it's an important element to think about. So now, how do you actually fix reverb? You have a lot of ways. You have absorbers. You also have diffusers, and basically, when you think about the reverb taming techniques, it really depends on which one you want to go for. So when I speak about absorbers or diffusers, what is that, right? So, well, any given surface in a room does one or three things to any sound that hits it: absorb it, reflect it, or diffuse it. Okay, in reality, all surfaces do all of these things to one degree or another, depending on the characteristics of the sound, but it helps to understand it more simply. The characteristic that we're most trying to avoid in our space is actually reflection. Specifically, what you want to do here is that direct reflection that are going to bounce off the walls and into your ears or microphone. This means what? It means that you want to create a space that either absorbs or diffuses the sound in the room without necessarily deadening the sound of the space being recorded in. And this is an important element to think about. So, what exactly can you add to your recording setups or environment to help absorb or diffuse the sounds around you? Well, you have gobos, for instance. Now, a gobo, an industry name short for go-between, is actually mounted to a microphone stand to absorb sound behind the microphones and to the sides. And a gobo actually is also referred to as a reflection shield. So reflection shields actually work great in non-harsh acoustical environment that just need a little absorption to prevent echo. So to prevent echo, sorry. If you are recording in a bedroom or a closed closet, this may be all you need really to actually prevent the echo that is coming from that space. Okay, so an important element. You also have acoustic or sound blankets. So sound blankets, aka moving blankets, are actually a staple for controlling sound in film and audio recording locations. Be sure to get the quilted moving blankets as they actually absorb sound much better. And so you can also use absorbers. So looking around the internet, you might get the impression that basically RLX has cornered the market on sound absorption materials, And but thankfully and less expensively, nothing can be further from the truth. So for a bit of the DIY treatment, you can actually think about a fiberboard wrapped in burlap, duck cloth, or similar. So you can have a lot of great absorption possibilities there. You also have to think about the types of absorbers for reverb. You have a porous absorbers. You also have a membrane absorbers. So that's kind of cool. You have panel absorbers, and you also have a resonant absorbers. So you have a lot of possibilities, especially when it comes to absorbers all the time. Now, where should you hang your absorbers and diffusers? Well, let me give you a few methods. Method one, there is an app for that. So RLX has produced an app for both Android and iPhone that helps you map your recording space and shows you the optimal placement of absorbers and diffusers in your space. Okay, so this is important. And so that's the first method. And so you want to get that app and see how you can use the app to actually optimize your sound reflection in the particular environment where you are going to do your podcasting or even audio recording. Okay. Then you also have so that's the first method. Then you have the second method. The second method is actually the mirror test. So the mirror test is a fairly simple means to determine where to hang your acoustic foam. So what you want to do is you want to place your monitors for a listening room or a stationary object for a vocal room where the monitors or speaker will normally stand. Very important. You got to really think about the geography of the room. Okay. Then you want to place a compact or a hand mirror against each wall in the room, level with the monitors or object, and you want to mark any spots along the wall where the monitors or object are visible from the mirror while standing directly in front of it, including the wall directly in front of and also behind it, as well as the ceiling. Okay. Then what you want to do is you want to install your foam and diffusers where you have marked using the mirror. So this helps you actually delineate the sort of space, the sound space that you want to delineate in your room, so that you can know exactly where to place the diffusers and how to really make sure that you are having like the right setup for it. And when you actually use the mirror test, also make sure that you can do a test, an audio test, to see what happens in terms of reverb, especially as you record several episodes in the same location, the same room. One thing you need to really understand is that reverb is not going away. Okay, reverb will almost always be there, even when you have treated your room enough that you can no longer hear it, right? And so it's one of those things where you have to really ask yourself, how do you actually at least diminish it? How do you mitigate the risk of not the risk, but the impact of reverb? Because the reverb and acoustic treatment are common topics that come up actually as you are a podcaster, especially if you want to record multiple episodes of your podcast show. Okay, and so many podcasters will not be in a position to entirely treat an environment either. Getting rid of excessive reverb or echo is actually important if you want your content to sound semi-professional, but if good enough means you can now get on with your content creation, then leave it at that. Okay. But again, if you think about the reverb or reverb mitigation, you got to really ask yourself the impact of the reverb impact on your audience, because it's all about everything you're doing as a podcaster. You are going to make sure that you improve your LX as much as possible. Your LX means what? LX means your listener experience. So you are trying to improve things as fast as possible, so that in the end, the LX for your target audience is really great. And one thing for sure, you got to really ask yourself, why should you do things yourself versus outsourcing this to a third party? Because you have production facilities that actually can really come and take care of the reverb in your room for you. It really depends on the vision you have for your podcast. If you just start, let's say you have a small podcast facility or podcast production, then maybe it's not really worth it. But if you have a scaling vision, if you think about actually expanding your podcast in the future, then it might be worth it to actually think about like think about fixing reverb once and for all, because that's going to help you actually instill an extra layer of let's say professionalism, okay, an extra layer of scalability, an extra layer of efficiency in your production right off the bat, okay, and that's going to help you if you have a team also. If you have a team, if you have a production team behind your podcast also. Now, when it comes to reverb and fixing reverb, you got to really know the kind of walls that are worst, that actually are worst, are also best for reverb, because the location is really an important element when it comes to reverb, and the walls are really critical. And of course, so whether you are recording in your basement, you're recording in your living room, you're recording in your closet, recording at a leased facility, at a dedicated facility, you got to really understand that certain walls are worse for reverb. Generally speaking, hard and smooth surfaces are the ones you want to avoid. Okay, so whether you are in your basement or in your living room or in your front yard and backyard, you want to really avoid hard and smooth surfaces. Think of a recording studio with walls made of concrete, glass, or metal. Those walls do not absorb sound very well. Instead, they reflect it back into the room, and you do not want to have that, because this creates, when you have the reflection back into the room, this creates a lot of reverb or echo, making your audio sound muddy and indistinct, and you do not want to have this sort of features here. On the other hand, soft and porous walls are much better for reducing reverb. So walls made of materials like foam, fabric, or cork absorb sound waves, preventing them from bouncing around the room. So that's going to help you a lot if you are thinking about creating a professional experience vis-a-vis your podcast. One thing for sure is that if you don't have any capacity to like, you do not actually control the quality of the walls around your facility. That's why you might want to really maybe have a, like, buy a foam, or like a foam material to sort of reduce the reverb. And if you do this well, you should be able to have a decent quality audio in the end, so that you don't need to actually change, like you don't need to go to another facility just to record your podcast, okay? Because this could not even be a possibility, because if you are going to do multiple interviews with multiple guests, sometimes you can't just go to a dedicated facility for that. You might as well just do it in your house, or like in your normal facility, if you will. When you think about fixing reverb, you have to really understand that there are some ancillary concepts that revolve around reverb. For instance, you have a reverberation time, reverb times, or reverb decay. So reverb, as again, I just want to remind you, is actually created when sound waves bounce off surfaces in the room, creating a series of reflections. Now, the time it takes for these reflections to decay and dissipate is known as the reverberation time or reverb time. Okay, this is an important element to think about. So whether you have a 5 seconds or 10 seconds as reverb time will really matter on the quality or the stature of the walls in your location. So now, when I talk about the reverb time is actually the length of time it takes for a sound to decay by 60 decibels after the sound source has stopped. Now, this time is typically measured in seconds and can vary depending on the size and shape of the room, as well as the materials used in the construction of the walls, ceiling, and floor. So this trifecta is really important: walls, ceiling, and floor. Okay, and reverb times are important to consider when recording audio, because they can greatly affect the quality and clarity of your recordings. Especially, again, going back to what I said a little earlier, the LX, the listener's experience. And this is an important element to think about right off the bat. And so reverb times are actually are like rooms with long reverb times can actually create a lot of echo and make your audio sound muddy, while rooms with short reverb times can create a dry, sterile sound. Now, neither is actually interesting. because when you think about your listeners as the ultimate focal point, then you can see that you do not want to have a situation where either extreme is actually prominent in your podcast setup. You want to have a nice middle. You want to have a nice sort of average, so that you neither have a reverb situation or a non-reverb situation at all. Okay, that's an important element to think about, because otherwise you are going to have a crappy quality in your audio. Really. I want to also talk to you about reverb tails, because this is also another term that you might hear if you anticipate actually fixing your reverb, or let's say mitigate reverb in a room. So reverb tails are the lingering echoes that continue after the original sound has stopped. They are an important part of the overall sound of a recording and can greatly affect its perceived quality and depth, especially when your listeners have devices to actually hear your sound. In other words, if they're not just hearing your sound right away, but they just use other tools to actually hear your sounds. Okay, so short reverb tails can create a more dry and upfront sound, while longer reverb tails can add depth and space to a recording. So it really depends on the kind of situation, the kind of experience you want to create for your listeners. So the character of the reverb tail can also vary depending on the type of reverb effect used. For example, a plate reverb may have a smoother, more natural decay, while a digital reverb may have a more precise and defined decay. So whether you want to go for a defined decay or a natural decay really depends on what you want to have, again, in terms of experience. But one thing for sure, let me ask you a quick question. What is your experience as a podcaster? Are you a beginner, or are you an experienced podcaster? Depending on your experience, like your experience level, you might want to really think about having not only the equipment but also the software to kind of help you out, because there is software on the market right now that can actually attain the reverb in your sound. Okay, especially when it comes to you doing the editing or the adjustment of the audio. So you have software to really help you out. One thing for sure, really effective sound treatment doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg. A little DIY and some diligent mirror work can save you a bundle of equipment and improve the sound of your recording or mixing space. And your podcast listeners will notice the difference, that's for sure, especially if you are actually reaching out to listeners of different categories, if you will. So, in conclusion to this conversation, I spoke to you about reverb, and I gave you the approach. I spoke to you what reverb is, how to fix it, where to hang your absorbers and diffusers. I spoke to you about basically reverb itself in terms of the walls, how what's the quality reverb time. I also spoke to you about reverb tails. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.